Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Market Wrap. So this week we got a little bit of a special show because this is our 50th episode. Now I can't believe they've let me go on for 50 episodes, and to kind of commemorate that, I decided to have a special guest join me. And sitting next to me is my son Mitchell. He's our latest intern at WatchBox, and I thought it would be great fun to have him and kind of get a perspective of the market from a younger generation standpoint. So we're going to go through our regular routine. We've got some cool watches that came in this week. The first one we're going to talk about is the Omega. It's a dark side of the moon, but it's the Apollo 8 skeleton dial. So how does this hit you, Mitchell?
I love it. I think the black is really nice, and the skeleton dial really makes it a lot more interesting. And I think the yellow accents are a really nice touch to it as well.
No, it's an awesome piece. Love that piece. We don't get a lot of those dark sides. They tend to trade very quickly, so it's a cool one to have. Now, the second piece we're going to talk about is a little different. This was the new Breitling 57. You're already starting to laugh. So this is the Rainbow. Now, this has been a hot watch, and I got to be honest with you, I just don't get it. I understand Rainbow Daytonas to some extent, but this Rainbow Breitling, I just think does nothing for me. But maybe I'm just the old guy who doesn't like cool hip things. So what are we thinking about the Rainbow?
Even coming from someone younger, I mean, it's an interesting one, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. The Rainbow kind of throws it off a little bit for me. I mean, it's still very cool, but it doesn't really do it for me.
All right, so the last one we've got is a Rolex GMT, and it's the steel and gold GMT. I've always been a big GMT guy, love that piece. This particular one is of interest because one, it's the year you were born, it came out in 2000, and this has the SERDI dial. So typically we see the SERDI dials in kind of that gray sapphire piece. This is the ruby version. It's super rare. It was not the best seller back in the day, but today it's become very cool. I just think it's an awesome piece.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome. I think the dial is really interesting, kind of sets it apart from the others. And I think it's also really cool from my perspective that it was actually made in the year that I was born.
There you go, something to commemorate. So I thought it would be fun to have Mitchell on and just talk about, literally for 20 years, people have been telling me that, you know, the watch business is going to go away, cell phones are going to replace it, the next generation just isn't going to care about stuff, watches, certainly not telling time. So I just would love to hear your perspective on, you know, what do you see on guys your age about watches?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot different. I mean, we all have our phones in our pockets, so the time piece isn't as much of a necessity anymore. But I think what's really interesting is still the popularity between culture, between music and all that. So a lot of the pieces such as Rolex and Audemars are really popular with the younger crowd. And I think that that is going to be a big player for younger people and collectors.
So your guys know what like Patek and Audemars is just from like rap songs and popular music and that kind of stuff. No, I think the culture thing has made it so like, I know when I was a kid, even my dad was a watchmaker, like I knew some of these brands, but like nobody of my age would know what a Rolex or a Patek or an Audemars, but the culture and the social media, I think makes it so people are more interested, and it's definitely increased the awareness of these brands.
Yeah, the awareness has definitely been increased a lot, and it kind of everyone around my age in college knows what a Rolex is, and everyone seems to kind of enjoy it and really appreciate it for what it is, and it also is something big that everyone looks up to, from social media posts to people wearing them and all that kind of stuff as well.
Well, that's cool. All right, so when was the first time you like cared to wear a watch or wanted to think about a watch?
The first time I really, well, I'd always thought about watches with him, working trade shows with him, and the first time I really wanted to wear a watch was my junior year prom, and I had asked him if I could borrow one of his watches. I did ask this time, and he let me wear one of his Rolexes.
So yeah, no, I think it's the steel and gold sub we have here. I remember being a little bit surprised because it was the first one. You know, I have three boys. Mitchell's my middle guy. Obviously my favorite, but he was the first guy who really was interested in wearing a watch, and I thought it was really cool, and I was like, sure, of course, yeah, let's go get it, let's fit it, let's try it, and then, you know, you took off with it, and my wife's like, what did you do? I don't think she thought it was a great plan to give a 17-year-old you know, steel and gold Rolex to wear around, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well for me.
There you go. All right, so the next one you stole about is another interesting story. Why don't you talk to us about the Patek there?
So the Patek I really got into was I was doing a trade show with him in New York, and Patek was having the Grand Exhibition at the same time. So we had gone over to walk around, see what they had there, And I actually ended up doing a project in high school with Patek. So
you got to be a marketing intern at Patek.
I got to be a marketing intern at Patek.
Pretty good job. Not quite as good as being a marketing intern at WatchBox.
Of course not.
You know,
but
we'll take it.
Exactly. But he, of course, said that I couldn't go to the Patek office without wearing a Patek. So he let me wear this, and Mom was definitely a little skeptical about this one.
I think she was more concerned about you going to New York than just wearing the watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it definitely took a long time for that one to find its way back to Dad.
Yeah, I remember looking about 6 months later going, where's my Patek? Yeah, okay, I found it in your drawer. Well, that's awesome. All right, so one more question just so we get it. Any watch in the world, what's your grail watch?
If I could have any watch in the world right now, it would be a Patek 5960.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of the first that really caught my eye at the Grand Exhibition a few years back when I was there with him, and I've loved it ever since.
Really? All right, which version? Because they did the platinum, they do the steels.
The steel with the black dial.
Of course. Yeah, that's quite a hot watch these days.
Yes, it is.
You should have bought one back then. You're going to need to get a real job one of these days if you're going to buy one of those.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're at Patek. What's that experience like, being a young kid getting thrown into this watch world, which is kind of an odd place? I mean, it's not a normal course of business. Mm-hmm. What was Patek like for you?
It was a really great experience. You know, it was my first real experience with an actual internship, not anything just actual in an office. It was my first real experience, and it was definitely a big adjustment. You know, traveling to New York for work and just being around all the Pateks and all that and helping them do some of the events was definitely a really big experience, and it was definitely a lot different and definitely a few weird looks from a few customers to have someone that young in the office, but I think it was a really great experience.
All right, so obviously Patek was a big deal going there, and their tagline has always been, you own it for the next generation.
Yeah.
So is it something that you would look forward to stealing mine, getting mine one day? Is that some kind of connection you see? Or is it like you want to go out and get that 5960?
I mean, I would love to someday go out and get the 5960, but I'm also hoping that, when the time does come, that this one could get passed down to me as well.
Okay, so this one's your favorite out of my
Out of your collection right now, yes.
That's the one I have. I love that. No, I love the fact. And again, it's true. It's definitely a marketing line, but Patek as a company to me was always the pinnacle. And when I was a kid, listening to my dad as a watchmaker, he always talked about Patek is the best there is, and it was something you always aspired to.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of cool to think, and from a dad's perspective, think I have something that means something to me, and then I can pass it to you, and you actually care.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot of things we don't care, we don't always see eye to eye, we don't always share the same interests, but I think it's really cool that we have that connection with a brand like Patek that's been around for so long, that's so well known, but there's certainly an emotional connection with the brand.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's definitely one of those brands where it is such an upper level that it is one of those that you're not really going to get rid of as often, and the goal ultimately is to pass it along.
And I guess the last thing I want to talk about is we talked about, you missed our Christmas event of collecting together. And it's one of those things, out of all the three boys, you're really the only one who's really shown interest in watches. And also, you're a car guy, I love cars, so we share that. We do that collecting together thing. And I'm wondering do you see younger people who are into cars and watches, is it a connection with that? Or is it just, is there any relationship you see there?
I definitely see a relationship. I think it's just the relationship of luxury goods in general. A lot of people appreciate them a lot more, whether it's a car, whether it's a watch.
Not your older brother.
Exactly. And it's kind of the same people who appreciate the luxury cars and all that, who also appreciate the luxury watches.
Got it. So doesn't look like we're going to skip a generation in any way.
No, definitely
Awesome.
not.
It is the Super Bowl. I know it's a little painful for you because I'm a Giants guy, but you are not. Tell us.
I'm a Patriots fan.
All right, and how are we feeling about Tom Brady being a Patriots fan these days? Are we rooting for him or are we rooting against him?
I mean, I always, no matter where Tom Brady is, I'd still always love to see him succeed, but I think the Chiefs are the better team this week, and I think the Chiefs are going to end up going on to win the Super Bowl.
So money's on the Chiefs?
Money's on the Chiefs.
I find it hard to bet against the GOAT, but I think money's on the Chiefs too. So the last thing we're going to talk about is watches we want to buy. And the first one is one we do talk about periodically, but The longer data graph, the original version, 403035, the 39 millimeter, we have gotten wiped out. They've gotten really strong on the market. It's always something we're looking for. The second piece is the classic Rolex Submariner. Now everybody knows new sub came out last year. The ceramics are super hot, but we're really seeing a lot of interest in the earlier generation 16610s, always looking for those. And the last piece is FP Journe. Now, I don't even know if that's a brand you're even familiar with, but it's a very small brand. They do a watch called the Chronometra Blue. It has become just hotter than hot. It's trading in the high 60s now, and we just cannot keep them in stock. So that's always something we're looking for. So that's this week's Market Wrap. I hope you enjoyed our 50th episode. I hope you enjoyed having Mitchell join me. I hope you can come back maybe for our 100th again.
Hopefully, that'd be awesome.
Great having you.
Thank you.